You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, my guest is Bodhi Aldridge. He is a transformational coach, facilitator, speaker, and he's passionate about supporting men to experience true freedom and ignite their inherent magnificence. Today, we are going to speak about leadership again, but we are going to speak about men in leadership. Very often we have episodes about women in leadership, and I'm really happy that today we are speaking about men, and this episode is about it. Hi, Bodhi. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Yeah, hi, Elena. Thank you for having me, and very excited about this topic and being here today.
Bodhi, as I mentioned, we have a lot of episodes in our podcast, and we have a lot of experts now specializing in women in leadership and promoting women. And I really like that you are focusing on men, because even though I'm organizing TEDx Women events and I'm all for supporting women, I feel that men sometimes are feeling left alone, especially right now, and they need more support. So as you're working with men, what challenges do you see that male leaders have in the workplace right now?
Yeah, it's a big question. And as the listeners may gather, I'm based in Australia, yet I work globally, and I've just come back from Europe. I've run some events around the future of male leadership. So I ran an event in Paris, I ran several events in London, and it was quite a provocative title and got some interesting responses because exactly as you say, we know this incredible movement of empowering female leaders. Seems to be some trepidation, when we lean into the future of male leadership. What does male leadership look like? And to your question, one of the big things I'm noticing with my clients, that a lot of the leaders I know in their 40s, the men in their 40s, are going, where are the role models? What does it look like? Because a lot of them are looking at the patriarchal leadership and the hyper masculine and, what some people call the toxic masculine, which we're all aware of. And they're going, that's not me. But where is the model of the masculine energy in leadership that I can follow? And so part of this, what are they struggling with? Part of it is a lot of them have lost the sense of what is it to be in my masculine? What is it to be a man? And we'll talk about gender and the masculine and feminine energies for the listeners in a minute. So there's a level of vulnerability, there's a level of uncertainty, there's a level of, as we up level the playing field, if you think about diversity and inclusion, you think about there's so much unconscious bias, particularly around white men, who have no idea the barriers to entry for women, for people of color, for people of disadvantaged minority groups. So suddenly we're starting to up level the playing field. And surprisingly, and I've called them on it, I've had a few sort of white men saying they feel vulnerable and threatened. And I'm like, now you know what everyone else has felt like for the past 150 years. Not in a flippant way, but in a realistic way, because they have no idea what it feels like to be of any other, again, being white men. Does that make sense, Elena? Can you see that?
Yes, absolutely. I can see this, that very often when we're speaking about leadership, even on Ideas and Leaders podcast, we say that, there is this, toxic masculine, as you mentioned, way of doing leadership. And then there is a new way, which is more feminine and understanding. And very often those different styles are associated with masculine and feminine, although both men and women can adopt toxic leadership style and can adopt the caring leadership style. So what you mentioned about those masculine and feminine energies. How do you think we can balance those energies somehow to find this perfect style for us?
Yeah. The first thing to know is it's not about gender. And so I work a lot in leadership. I also have sat with a lot of traditional cultures, the Aboriginal culture here in Australia, the Native American culture, but all traditional cultures, they labeled this energy in the universe and in the earth that they saw, this polar energy, polarizing energy. Yeah. And they could have labeled it anything. Yet what they called it was the masculine and feminine, the Shakti, Shiva, the yin and the yang. Yeah, because what they identified is that the whole universe works in polarity, the north and south pole. So this current of energy is running through the universe, it's running through Mother Nature, Father Sky, and it's running through us. And interesting, the feminine energy is everything that flows, everything that moves. And the deep desire for the feminine energy in us is connection and love, connection and love, connection and love. It's constantly moving. It's like the ocean. It'll be wild, it'll be calm, it'll be cool, it'll be hot. It's constantly in movement. The masculine energy is that which presences the feminine. So it's the feminine is the river, the masculine is the riverbanks. Mm-hmm. It's that in us that holds that feminine, that Shakti, that creative energy. And when you start to realize it's everywhere and in all of us, one of the biggest challenges is that we get confused between the masculine and feminine energy and the masculine and feminine traits. So there are certain traits. And the beauty is the neuroscientists agree with the psychologists, who agree with the spiritualists, who agree with traditional wisdom. We're really now seeing around a lot of things this realization that, everybody's agreeing. Everything is frequency and vibration. Nikola Tesla, the scientists, the spiritualists, that's all that's happening. Everything is frequency and vibration. So what happens is the vibration of the masculine energy, most men are more in their masculine energy. And most women are more in their feminine energy. And that's a huge generalization, with gender fluidity, with same-sex relationships, so please, any of the listeners, just accept I'm generalizing. Yet in my experience, and certainly the studies I've read, most, as I say, are in that way. And working with a lot of same-sex relationships, often the partners will say, you know what, I'm more in my masculine and you're more in your feminine energy. That's important. My wife and I have been together over 40 years. It's important to maintain that polarity. That's the attraction. That's the juice. That's what keeps a healthy relationship. If you're attracted to the opposite. And again, there's fluidity, all of those sorts of things. What happens though, when we look at it, and this has been the challenge, I think, for a lot of women, is that a lot of women have thought they have to become more masculine to survive in the business world, instead of realizing I just have to access masculine traits. I can stay in my feminine energy. And the masculine and feminine traits, so the neuroscience, the studies around the brain are interesting. There's part of our brain that learns through empathy, and there's a part of our brain that learns through information. And so, the left and right brain, when they first did those studies, they were onto something, yet they didn't quite land it. So what we know now is that the part of our brain that learns from empathy, which could be called the feminine aspect of our brain, when the feminine aspect in the brain is activated, it's all about connection, collaboration, complexity. That's the feminine energy. The masculine energy is all about agency, autonomy, action. And so if you think about it, and you've worked in many, many different places, the key to leadership, when I work with leaders, and I know this podcast is for leaders, the key to leadership, every leadership team I've worked with, the two keys to leadership are connection and direction. That's what every team member is looking for. Yep. Every time I work with teams, they say, if I feel connected to my line manager, to my CEO, and I have clear direction, I'm a happy camper. And that's actually the feminine connection and the masculine direction. And so, and it starts with yourself, as you know, connection starts with a leader being connected with themselves. I know I'm raving on here. I know we haven't got a lot of time to cover this big topic. To bring it all together, Elena, what happens is if you're a woman in a leadership role, instead of becoming more masculine, it's about how do I stay in my feminine and access masculine traits. There are times when I need to be strategic. There are times I need to be linear. There are times when I need to read the spreadsheet. The brain is activating that aspect of our brain, but you can still stay in your feminine energy. Yeah. And for men in their masculine, what I teach them is how do I access both my masculine traits and my feminine traits? Connection, collaboration, complexity, nurturing, caring. And we all know we can do this. Most of us do it. You know, fathers who care for their children, yet mothers who run a household have to be bloody organized. You know, you've got to have your timetable, the kids to school, all those things. If you look at a lioness will roar and protect her cubs, but she's still in her feminine. And that's where we're headed. That's what's occurring is when I work in the boardrooms, we're missing so much of the collective energy and talent in our organization because we don't understand this. We see masculine or feminine instead of masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Does that
that
make sense? That was a bit of a rave.
yeah, it is so important to understand this and also to embody it, because it is easy when we are speaking about it theoretically, but practically, I think that it might be challenging, because when you mentioned relationships, and I'm thinking when we are in relationships, we somehow have those energies and those roles divided. But in business, very often we are speaking about equality right now. So we are speaking about the diversity and inclusion, that we are all different, but we are equal and we need to be equal no matter gender. And I think that this is something that is kind of, on one hand, it is great. It is an amazing movement. But on the other hand, it is saying that you have to behave the same as him, as her, and we are all different. But what you're saying is that we are all different. And what do you think, how can men leaders, what can they do? What can they start doing to actually embody those feminine energies, not only behaviors, but also to kind of find the right balance?
Yeah. And thank you for the question. That, you know, when I work with leaders, the three keys, first is embodied presence. So I take people through embodied practices. Yeah, how do I really get present? You know, and again, mindfulness is a fantastic tool. It opens the door, but embodiment, as you mentioned, is the key. Embodied presence, and they're, you know, part of the giveaway to the listeners is some practices that I teach. The three pillars, the three legs of the stool for the masculine are embodied presence, purpose, and passion. And it's passion for life. And so that's what I teach male leaders. Now, I love the point you make about diversity and inclusion, you know, because diversity and inclusion starts with diversity and inclusion in yourself. We're all diverse. Think of your family of origin. Think of your upbringing. Think of the masculine and feminine energies. Think of mine. Like, that's where this starts. If we don't embrace our own diversity and include our own unique story, our own unique gifts, then often it just becomes ticking a box about how many, you know, people do we have in the boardroom. And then the pillars for the future of male leadership that I teach for any of the male listeners here, the 4 pillars for the future of male leadership, and I'll explain them, but I'll give you the 4 pillars. The first is connection. The second is collaboration. The third is compassion. And the fourth is curiosity. That's the future of male leadership. And so connection starts with presence, embodied presence. It's connecting with yourself. It's doing the work. It's dealing with your shadow. It's dealing with your issues. Yeah. And again, every business, it's about people are looking for connection and direction. So if you're not connected with yourself, it's very hard to connect with your team. Collaboration's fascinating. The feminine in us collaborates just by the innate trait of collaboration. If you watch women in their feminine, it's all about collaboration. It's all about communication. You know, I often say if you watch a woman in her feminine with her girlfriends having a cup of coffee, everybody's collaborating, everyone's connecting. The communication is so different to when you watch a couple of men having a cup of coffee.
Yes, and
the
sorry to interrupt you, but I just
Yep.
attended a conference. I was speaking at a conference last Friday, organized by a woman and with women speakers. It was about women in business. And it was so amazing to see this feminine energy in business, because those women, they're earning millions. It was about online business. And they were crying on stage and hugging and thanking each other and, starting new collaborations together. And I was thinking that when I'm, for example, at an economic forum or some, mostly male-dominated conferences, there is none of it going on, because and I don't. On one hand, I see this difference, but on the other hand, I don't think that you can just switch it on or switch it off. It is just something that is so inherently in us that I don't know if some of those female traits, like this deep collaboration and connection, it can be even accessed for men. Do you see that this
you'll be
challenge for
amazed.
men?
No, well, it can be a challenge. What amazes me though, Eleanor, is they don't know. They don't understand that the feminine communicates totally different to the masculine. Totally different. One of the exercises I do with leadership groups, men or men and women, is a very simple exercise where what the feminine hears is totally different to what the masculine hears. And this is going on in every boardroom I've worked in. And it literally is. It's not even that the men want to be difficult. They literally don't. They've never been taught this stuff. So if you think about the masculine in communication, it's all about literal. It's all about linear. It's all about strategy. When I do strategic planning with leadership groups, if there's feminine in the room, particularly females in their feminine, if you do a typical strategic plan, anyone who's running a business or a consultant, strategic planning is all masculine. It's all about the future. How many offices, how much turnover, how much staff, we're going to conquer the world. And the feminine glazes over and goes, what the? I want to know, what are the relationships going to be like? What's it going to feel like in the organization? And I've seen it so many times. I've seen so many great facilitators miss half the room. With a great strategic plan that's through the lens of the masculine. And the men get all excited and it's like, fantastic, we're going to grow the business. And so it really is. Applying it may be trickier, but understanding it, I see the jaws drop with the men, literally the jaw drop, by just taking them through simple exercises in the boardroom. They're like, I never knew, I never realized that the feminine was listening different. I never realized, the biggest challenge for the feminine is being heard and being seen. How many times in a board meeting does the feminine have the idea, come up with the concept, doesn't get heard, doesn't get seen, and then halfway around the room, one of the men says exactly the same thing, and everyone goes, what a great idea. And the guys have no idea that they're not even creating space for the feminine. One of the things I teach female leaders is how to create your own real estate. How do you create your own space in the boardroom? Not by becoming more masculine, but by owning your presence. And by understanding how the masculine listens and the masculine receives information compared to the feminine. And accessing that trait in yourself without losing your feminine. Does this make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it is so important to go through these exercises for both men and women to kind of access this different energies. And even when I'm thinking about this conference that I mentioned, even the words that those women were saying to each other, they were saying, I feel such a great energy with your presence. I really love being around you. And and those are women who are business owners, who are really doing serious business. And they not strategize, they did not do anything like this. They were speaking about feelings, emotions, the relationships,
Yeah.
building relationships. And yes, absolutely. So I think that if we could both borrow something from each other, that would be great. So you mentioned those four pillars, so connection,
Yeah.
collaboration,
Yeah.
and what were the other ones?
Compassion and curiosity.
Mm.
And so if I talk, so collaboration again, which is, so when the masculine walks into a room, yeah, it's all about hierarchy. It's all about judgment. Again, this is, there's healthy and unhealthy in all of this. But when men walk into the room in their masculine, who's the richest? Who's the smartest? Who's the CEO? Where do I fit in? It's not about collaboration and connection and how do we sit together. And it's a totally different filter. Yeah. When we come to compassion, we know, the great work that's been done around vulnerability. Yeah. And the thing with vulnerability, and, we know the studies around psychological safety and emotional safety, that Google did the big study about how do you create cultures. The key to all of it is, so the key to psychological safety is vulnerability. Yeah, the ability to be vulnerable. Vulnerability as a strength, as we know, the great work of Brené Brown, as opposed to vulnerability as a weakness. Yet all of it requires coming back to the heart. And that's where compassion is. Yeah. So compassion is a superpower. Compassion is the field that the heart can create to hold the energy. Yeah. The studies are clear that the most effective leaders, it's all about the relational field they create. Yeah, it's the field of energy through embodied presence through the heart. And this is the same for parenting. It's the same for any sorts of modalities. And so compassion, again, as we know, it's not an easy road to be compassionate for yourself, to love yourself, to acknowledge and heal all of those parts of yourself. And the doorway from vulnerability is into compassion. And then a compassion for your team, compassion for others. True empathy only lives in true compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And the final one, because I know we haven't got a lot of time, curiosity is such a fascinating concept for leaders who are used to having to have the answer, to get to a solution, to solve the problem. And that's the distorted masculine often. When the masculine's listening, they're already thinking, how do I fix this? How do I solve it? Yeah, what's the answer? I'm the CEO. I need to create the solution. We don't have time for this. We've got to get this done. Yeah. And we know that through the lens of curiosity, some of the most powerful breakthroughs have occurred. Some of the deepest connection occurs. And so the ability to be really present and curious, with yourself in any relationship, it's a superpower for the masculine leadership that, again, has been discounted or unacknowledged. And so if you find a leader, full stop, but certainly find a leader, a man in his masculine who's truly connected to himself, truly collaborate. This isn't about competition and winning at all costs. This is about, when the feminine has meeting, excuse me, the feminine sits in circle. Everybody gets a chance to speak. Yeah. The masculine, it's all about hierarchy. Our business models are designed through hierarchy, the framework, the CEO, they're designed for war, the general manager, the chief executive officer. It's all about hierarchy, and that leads to power and control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Traditional cultures, the feminine sits in circle. So collaboration, compassion and curiosity. I just feel they're the pillars of the future of male leadership.
Yeah, I really love it. Those 4 pillars. So connection, collaboration, compassion, and curiosity. So let's leave our listeners with some practical tips on what can we do to start introducing those elements into our leadership style. Can you recommend any exercises and specific things that we can start doing right now to embody it?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a giveaway in the show notes. Done a free mini course, so it's just www.freeminicourse.com, and that has some practices in there and some distinctions. It's about freedom and flow, how to create freedom and flow. Yeah. My podcast, True Freedom, I go deeper in a lot of these concepts, so it's on all the usual podcast apps. And it's a great question. I have a great exercise that I haven't actually put on the website, Eleanor, and if any of the listeners reach out, which is a great exercise around moving in the masculine and feminine energy. I take it through all of my executive teams, and it's a very simple exercise, yet because, as you mentioned early on, this is about embodiment and feeling it. In 10 minutes, people just have a transformational experience. So I'll see. It's difficult to give some of these without context, as you know.
Yeah.
The other piece to answer your question is it really, again, we know through the studies that the most effective leaders have a daily reflective practice. Yeah, they studied the leaders, effective leaders, quote unquote, and they mapped their behavior for 1 month. And the most effective leaders had at least once a day a reflective practice. Now, reflective practice is time dedicated to reflection, on who you are, how you're showing up. So it's not going to the gym, it's not running. That's important, and that unpacks your thinking mind, but that's not reflection. Reflection is contemplation. Reflection is prayer, meditation, embodied presence, anything that gets you into that state of presence and reflection. So for any of the listeners, my support is, and there's some exercises on the website, if you have a daily reflective practice, and as we know, the power of journaling, and if you don't, I'd encourage it, just reflect on, notice where your energy is coming from. Notice whether you're in your masculine and feminine. Notice your traits when you make decisions as a leader, when you make decisions for your family. Just notice, start to become more aware. Anyone who's in a committed relationship, notice how your partner listens different if they're in the opposite energy. And anyone with children, like, really notice. This is happening. They did some studies on 6-year-old children, girls and boys. And again, this isn't about gender, yet this is about the energy. So they were just playing t-ball, like a baseball game. And when the girls were playing and the girls got out, all the other girls basically went, you can have another go. It's okay. Try again. You can do better. All the little boys, it was like, you're out, my turn. I'm next. I'm going to do better. Like, again, this isn't a good or bad. This is what's happening in these energies and these traits. So anyone with children would know, I've run lots of youth programs, children's programs. I take the boys and the girls to the beach to go, where I live. The first thing the boys pick up is a stick. And the first thing the girls do is do art on the sand. And again, these are huge generalizations, please, listeners. I'm just giving you a flavor of what's possible.
Yeah, it is great to notice those elements in others, but also in ourselves, as you mentioned. So reflective practices, journaling, meditation, and noticing our behaviors and analyzing. I think that it is so important. So thank you so much, Bodhi, for being an Ideas and Leaders. If our listeners want to reach out to you, so definitely we will put your mini course in the show notes so that our listeners can use it. And thank you so much for offering a free mini course. And where can we find you if they want to ask additional questions? Where is the best way to contact you?
The best way is through the website, www.freeminicourse.com. Bodhi, BODHI, Aldridge, ALDRIDGE.com. And on there's an application if you'd like to reach out. If you've got any questions, love to hear from the listeners. Always happy to support in any way I can. And as you can tell, similar to yourself, Elena, I'm passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about communication and leadership. And I'm passionate about communication and leadership through the masculine and feminine lens.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for this insightful conversation. I learned so much myself, and I'm sure that our male and female leaders learned a lot as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the listeners.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.